In Saturday night's ice hockey at Ryde Arena, where the goals were merely the appetiser for a late main course, a flurry of frozen fisticuffs. The wild, windy weather had disrupted the Raiders' plans for a double training session ahead of this match, but the club's new management team, led by Steve Price, were upbeat about the latest visit to Ryde Arena by the Bracknell Bees. Despite their status as English Premier League title contenders, Bracknell had only beaten the Raiders 2-0 with a pair of late goals during their last trip to the island in November. But Saturday saw Bracknell impatient to prove their potential championship credentials, the Bees flying into a 2-goal lead inside a quarter of an hour. With half an hour gone, the Raiders were 4-0 down, and some fans already thought it was game over. Ex-Isle of Wight player Joe Baird assisting the third goal. There'll be more from him later. The Raiders gave the home crowd a glimmer of hope with 2 goals in the last 10 minutes of the second period. Stuart Tate on target again after timeout because of injury recently. Bracknell restored their 4-goal advantage barely a minute later, but the Raiders responded with a goal from their man of the match, Dave Williams. At 5-2 down in the second period, the Raiders were dealt an injury blow. James Francis going down and out of the game with a suspected torn knee cartilage. The man responsible, Bracknell's Jamie Lyne, punished with a match penalty. Francis was taken to hospital and now faces at least 3 weeks on the sidelines. More injury woes for the weakened Raiders and more selection issues for coach Scott Carter. The final period was dominated by Bracknell as they stung the Raiders with 3 goals in 5 minutes. Bracknell supporters chanted, "We want 10," and ex-Raider Joe Baird duly obliged with this unorthodox effort against netminder Toby Cooley, who had done so well to keep the Bees at bay for the majority of their last match at Ryde Arena in November. With 4 minutes remaining, Bracknell were 12-2 ahead. Raiders fans were stunned into silence and submission, and Scott Carter's men seemed destined for their second biggest home defeat of the season so far. Bracknell appeared to be at their exuberant best, but disappointment and frustration proved too much for the Raiders, who produced an explosive reaction. 3 fights in the final 3 minutes of the game. First, goal scorer Dave Williams showing no mercy in an altercation at the net. The eventual man of the match banished for the game's closing stages. Then the fans' favourite Norman Pinnington living up to his reputation with this scrap. He's played more than 800 matches, but his passion for rough justice on the ice shows no sign of waning. Finally, ex-Raider Joe Baird felt the full force of Andy Robinson's wrath. Subdued Raiders fans sprang into life, claiming victory and goading their opponents. But in the aftermath of battle, it was all Queensberry rules again, as the players shook hands at the end of a hard-fought match in more ways than one. The Raiders may have proved a point, but gained none that would help their efforts to get off the bottom of the English Premier League.